than being here in person, so I'm super glad to be here. Thank you to Chroma for letting us do this here again. I love Chroma. I love the style with which they do everything, and I love this space. So I'm going to throw it to Jeff really quick to talk about Chroma, and then we'll go into the Voice AI specific content. I will do one super quick logistical thing, which is that if you need to go back and forth, please don't go behind the curtain. Please walk around the back.
Awesome. Okay. I will keep this brief because you did not come to hear about Chroma. But I did want to mention a few fun updates from Chroma. So number one, a few months ago, we shipped version 1.0. Version 1.0 is totally rewritten in Rust and is 4 times faster than Chroma was before. So that's pretty big. Also, in order weeks, I won't give an exact commitment, but order weeks, we'll be releasing Chroma Cloud, which is Chroma's distributed serverless version. It just works, scales into infinity, really inexpensively. So if you are interested about that, obviously come find me, I'll give you credits. And then lastly, we're working on some pretty fun kind of CLI and sample app experiences to help developers build stuff really quickly and usefully. And I think one of the things that Chroma can do uniquely well is package both the code, yes, but also the data. As you all know, building great AI applications requires great data sets and great golden data sets, and hopefully also you're using production data to help eval and improve your system. And so we'll be shipping a bunch of sample applications with voice included. So that is on the lineup to come. So those are a few updates, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Jeff. So I was gonna do a little thing about what's new since last month, and then I gave up because there's so much stuff that's new since last month. There are models from Alibaba, AWS, Canopy Lab, DeepGraph, Glide, Grok, Google, Chris, Meta, OpenAI, PlayAI, Sesame, Tapas, Cifra, and I'm 100% sure I forgot at least one really interesting thing. So I thought I'd answer a question which I had 3 conversations about before this meeting started, and I get asked a lot, which is how do you keep up with everything that's happening in Voice AI? I have 4 personal go-to things that I look at every day. The Thursday podcast every week is a really great roundup, not voice specific, but covers everything that happens every week, and a real emphasis on open source, which is great. The Latent Space email newsletter, Swix is here. You can go find Swix to talk about Latent Space, and the podcast are absolutely essential resources. Brooke, one of the founders of Koval, does a really nice roundup every week on Twitter and LinkedIn of what's happening in conversational AI, broadly speaking. And the founder of Chris, David, does a really nice roundup roughly weekly on both LinkedIn and email. So if you, like me, have trouble keeping up with everything and you don't already check out these 4 things, it is worth doing. Another update about something in this community. So I'm super excited about the problem of turn detection, which a lot of people are doing interesting work on right now. OpenAI released a new turn detection model in the real-time API. Tapas has a new turn detection model in their real-time video avatar APIs. A bunch of us are working on a completely open source, open data, community-driven turn detection model that I think we can make state-of-the-art. And it's now running on FAL with about 60 millisecond inference time. I think there's some low-hanging fruit with the FAL engineers' help. I think we can get that down to maybe 20 milliseconds. If you are interested in training models at all, or small audio models in particular, it's a really fun project to be a part of. And if you just want to contribute data, you can play these really fun data collection games where you opt in and talk with an AI agent doing whatever it's doing. There's a bunch of different variants, and your voice is recorded, and then that goes into the dataset pipeline for the open source model. So check out get.new/turn if you want to go down the deep and fun rabbit hole of small audio models, or you just want to contribute some data. Oh, and there's a new checkpoint as of yesterday for that model, and a bunch of new data sets. We wrote a big book, which the print copies that were floating around here, we updated it last week. So as Roseanne said to me a minute ago, it's only a little bit out of date now. It's online now, and we're going to do another print run for the AI Engineer World's Fair in June. So my ask for people here is, if you've looked at the illustrated guide and there are things that should be there or should be better, tell me and help me write a section of it. Because the goal is for that, as long as we possibly can, to be updated and be a really good comprehensive guide to the always evolving world of conversational AI. And last speedrun thing, Swix and I are gonna do a Maven class. About a year ago, maybe, I can't even remember, I can't keep track of time. I happened to be part of this Maven class that started out as a fine-tuning seminar and grew and grew and grew and grew, and then somebody, probably Swix, dubbed it the Woodstock of AI. And it was really an amazing experience. I met a bunch of people in that course that I still bounce ideas around with and do stuff with. And it feels like, as evidenced by all the people who came out tonight, it's time to do that for a Voice AI conversational AI specific course. So we just put up the landing page. If you sign up with the Meetup code, it's half off. My view of pricing for these courses is that they're really, the cost of the ticket is just to make sure you're actually gonna participate. So there are other coupons. If you're an early stage startup, DM me, we'll figure something out. But if you're interested in Voice AI, come hang out with us, do the course. We're gonna have a bunch of people do guest lectures. We're gonna have a bunch of office hour sessions. It's gonna be super fun. And that's all that you have to hear only from me. Now we get to hear about a new speech-to-speech model. We have the founders of Phonic. You guys wanna come hang out and talk a little bit about what you're doing? There's water if you need it. And I'll move the laptop and let you get there. So, can you guys introduce yourselves and tell us what Phonic is and how you started working on it?
Yeah, my name's Moin.
Nikhil.
And Phonic is a AI infrastructure company to build voice AI apps, but with a particular focus for reliability. So a lot of our view is, it's a classic view, right? Is a lot of generative AI apps are quite experimental and quite high churn. Phonic helps you build the entire voice AI workflow. So if you build voice AI agents, we help you observe voice AI agents, and help you eval voice AI agents. And in particular, we use the evals to then cycle that in, do things like imitation learning, conditional successful calls, and then you have more successful voice AI agents as a consequence. We've helped our customers increase the success of the voice AI agents. And by success, we mean something like, were you able to achieve the task that you wanted, but over 2x within 3 weeks?
Yeah, so both Moin and I are co-founders. We started around a year ago, and yeah, really excited to just talk more about what Phonic is up to.
So I love the ambition of redoing the whole stack. I can definitely see the motivation for it. I also think it's challenging to wrap your arms around the whole stack. Is the heart of what you're doing a new speech-to-speech model? Is that a fair way to think about it?
I would say yes and no. I think how we see it is there's kind of a few different pieces that are blocking voice AI agents from really working at scale. I think the first core piece is that core modeling capabilities, right? Models aren't as conversational as they could be. We've all been on the phone with a voice AI agent. It sounds good, but kind of like an audiobook narration or something that isn't super conversational or natural, right? Same thing on the intelligence side, things like agentic actions and function calling. These things work at small scales, but when you're really trying to do a very complicated system, you end up having to have this massive state machine tree-like structure to chain everything together or hack your prompt over and over again to kind of get it to what it should be doing. And so we just think that AI has come a really long way. You can code entire applications, and I think these models are even more intelligent than they ever have been. And so we shouldn't be constructing voice AI apps in kind of that old way of thinking. So I think it starts with the modeling layer, but quite frankly, a lot of the benefits that we also see as compound models outside of the core model that enable it to kind of get that high amount of reliability and let it stay on track.
I'd like to pull on that thread a little bit. So I think a lot of us who've been building conversational agents have been trying to build compound models of some way, shape, or form. Sometimes we think about them as state machines. Sometimes we think about them as multi-agent systems. Sort of the abstraction is flexible, but the motivation is the same in every case. We're doing that at the application layer or up outside the model layer, outside the sort of API layer. What leverage do you get if you do that kind of inside your full stack effort?
So I think it firstly comes down to, I'll give like a very specific anecdote, but then can generalize it. So if you think about how a lot of text-based language models are post-trained, they're really trained to be really helpful, right? And a lot of times helpfulness means being very verbose. Like we've all seen kind of the output of ChatGPT and it's, many paragraphs. And that's great when you're reading it. But then if you're talking to an LLM and then it takes like 2 minutes to read those 3 paragraphs, you're just kind of sitting there. It's not very conversational, right? And so a lot of, I think, core voice problems are slightly different in text. I think there's a lot of overlap, but even being able to own the model allows for a much more conversational experience, allows us to post-train to the way that these applications actually require. And then, of course, how these compound models interact with the core inner model. Also, owning the model makes a big difference.
It is surprisingly hard to prompt SOTA models to be brief. We get this question a lot in the PipeCat Discord. Like, it's working, but like it's too verbose. And there are some tricks, but it's actually not as easy as you think it would be. You talked about post-training. There's a really broad audience here of people. Some people here work on models. Some people here are very far from the models. Can you just talk a little bit about training and post-training and what happens in both of those phases of work?
So training is this very generalized piece, right? The training task is next token prediction. So you're just trying to learn from the entire knowledge of something on the internet, right? Whether that be text, image, audio. You're just trying to learn how to say words, maybe. And the concept of post-training is a little more task-specific, where you have data for a particular task or a particular modality. And this really helps you you get really good at tailoring for that task. So in this case, this is why language models, for instance, blab so much, which is they're post-trained to be very helpful, but that means that they're very chatty as a consequence.
So less helpful models. That's what we're going for.
That's it.
I was also just going to say, like, there are certain modality shifts. Like, I'm sure many of you that have played with Voice AI things, if you get them to try to say numbers, they actually often stumble, which is like a really funny issue, right? It's kind of like simple, like humans would not struggle to say like 9 numbers in a row. But we've actually found with a lot of people, like getting a lot of these TTS models to say numbers, it makes a mistake. And then if it's a credit card number, the call fails. And so that's an example where post-training is really helpful, right? We can actually really make sure that the model nails some of these cases, saying emails, saying addresses, saying numbers. That's a very small example. I think a lot of the other post-training is like the conversationalness of the voice, things like that you can kind of extract out of the pre-trained model after the fact.
I mean, I will say that things that seem small when you have other problems seem big once you've solved some of those other problems. And I definitely think that's a trend we're seeing where we had a bunch of big problems. As an ecosystem, we figured out a lot of those solutions in 2024. In 2025, some of the big pain points are actually things that like we didn't have time to worry about last year, which are how do you say addresses? How do you say numbers? I think turn detection is one of those. Like we got kind of 80-20 turn detection working really well last year with voice activity detection. Now we're trying to do better. So it does feel like we're building these foundations and then we're leveling up. Are we going to have access to your stuff via an API? Is that the plan? How are you thinking about like going to market or distributing what you're doing? And are you going to do some of it open source?
Yeah, so currently we have customers that are calling us programmatically through API. So that's definitely something that we have and we'll kind of release GA soon. Open source, I think it's something that we have benefited a lot. I think the whole AI community has, right? I think that we're like every new text model that comes out that's open source, I think benefits everyone. And so we definitely want to contribute. I think even the turn detection could be something that right? Like something that we use and something that I think everyone needs and a great opportunity to maybe contribute. But definitely like something that's on the roadmap to contribute something back. Yeah.
Okay. So on the API kind of topic, loosely speaking, I think a lot about the design of orchestration layer tooling in APIs. So how do you take complicated logic and kind of use a variety of APIs, maybe a variety of models? How do you make things flexible? How do you see what you're doing with the full stack approach co-evolving with something like PipeCat, if you do? And it's fine if you think you can replace all of the orchestration layer stuff, which would in some ways also be awesome.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Our contract is rather simple. You just feed us audio in and you get audio out. So for instance, we don't need to, as opposed to others, we don't help orchestrate LLMs. We'll just take care of all that for you. Batteries are included. But for things like, for instance, helping with the SIP trunking or helping with the WebRTC, that's a complete orthogonal layer, right? The transport layer will help you get the audio. Once you get the audio, then you can feed that into us. But we're unopinionated on the transport interface, for instance.
But you think, so I'm going to push just a little bit on that for the purposes of the conversation. So you think you can get there with your full stack in a way with just audio input that can handle sort of complicated scripted workflows, that can integrate with backend systems in fairly messy ways, all the things we sort of depend on for the orchestration layer today, more than just stringing together multiple models.
Yeah, I guess what I would also say is like we are going to release the API and would love to integrate with tools. I think it's kind of meeting people where they are. I think for us, it's like a go-to-market question where I think the customers and people that I think are the best fit are those kind of looking for that end-to-end solution. But if developers want to use us through something like PipeCat, like we would love that too, right? And maybe that would be like a really cool way to interact with the model too. Like I think we will have an API where you can input speech and get speech out, and then you can plug it into some of those things like PipeCat.
One of the patterns I think we've seen again on this kind of theme of 2024 into 2025 is every time we solve one use case, we try to do the next more complicated use case. So there's like always a ceiling. And I've said that a lot in conversations about speech-to-speech models, which is I do think there are a lot of use cases where you can basically just have a speech-to-speach model do an amazing job. But there are an expanding array of use cases where you just need more stuff wrapped around the models. Last question. The publicly reported number for your fundraise was $4 million. You guys are doing a lot. We're used to thinking about training models, state-of-the-art models, as a very, very expensive thing to do. Comment?
Sure. I guess one thing is that we're not training models completely from scratch, right? We really benefit from open source. I think the better that like open models get, the easier our lives are, right? We're really taking some of these like great contributions to the space and building on top of that. So I think that goes a long way. I think if we were training these models 100% from ground zero, that would be a very different question.
I also think it's a bit of the finding out how to train the model the first time takes a lot of money. And then once you know how to do it the second time, it becomes quite easy. So that's where just a bit of work experience helps go a long way in the sense of if you've trained a model or adapted a model and have a little bit of the research experience, then the second time you know how to do it, you kind of know what to do and it's a little more of an execution play. And as a result, you don't need to spend on a cluster for R&D as much as a cluster just to train a couple of models, a playbook for what you already know.
Cool. Thank you guys so much. Can you stick around after the whole thing and answer what I'm sure will be lots more questions for you?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to try an experiment. This is new for the Voice AI Meetup. We're going to talk remotely to Freddie from Hugging Face, if we can find him on the interwebs. Hey, Freddie, are you here? Can you hear us? We can see you.
Yes.
That's so exciting. And Freddie added lighting since we did our pre-call check. and you look great on screen. So excited to have you here. I'm a big fan of what you're doing with FastRTC. I would love for you just to tell the room a little bit about FastRTC and how you got started doing this.
For sure. Thanks so much for having me and for bearing with me being remote. So basically I work at Hugging Face and I work on the Gradio team. And Gradio is all about like making easy interfaces for ML models for people who don't know how to build like a UI or like a server or anything like that. And basically my work on FastRTC started like out of Gradio. Like the first name of FastRTC is actually Gradio-WebRTC. And the origin story is that we wanted to be able to do like real-time streaming in Gradio, right? So we all saw that GPT advanced voice mode demo and we're like, okay, like how can we actually do that with Gradio? And then so I kind of went off on my own with like some of my team members to kind of try to make that happen. And then we kind of realized quickly that the Gradio architecture was not suited to this task, right? Because Gradio is like a classic, like you send a request, you get like a response back, classic sort of like web server. And like the low latency streaming paradigm is completely different, right? So that's how I started to learn and get into like WebRTC, WebSocket streaming, the trade-offs. And you know, like the first iteration of this was just like a custom Gradio component that would just do audio streaming and a Gradio interface. And then slowly we've been trying to make it more and more general so that you can kind of so that you're not tied to Gradio. You can kind of use whatever, you can kind of integrate it into like a larger system and deploy it however you want. You're not stuck with Gradio. And that's kind of where FastRTC is now. And like the mission statement is to try to make it really easy to build these like conversational apps or even video streaming, you know, in Python with like as few abstractions as possible.
You have a demo for us?
Sorry, I think
I'm sorry, I didn't juggle my two different mute buttons properly. Do you have a demo for us?
Yes, let me share my screen. Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Let me play it back. So just to give you guys some context, this is just like a conversational like for Llama 4. You speak, and then Llama 4 will talk back to you. So how's it going?
I'm doing well. Asking.
Do you know how many people have walked on the moon?
12 people have walked on the moon.
Okay, so just let's say like a quick thing about this. So this is like a Gradio demo that basically comes with FastRTC. So you don't have to code this at all. If you use FastRTC, you get it for free, right? And like one of the reasons for that is that, you know, it has the origins in Gradio where like the mission statement is to like get someone to be able to use this like pipeline as easily as possible, right? So WebRTC is like a web native technology. You can, if you're like an ML engineer, you can code like the audio in, audio out pipeline. You can piece the APIs together, but you still need some sort of client to call this, right? So rather than code that from scratch, you get it for free with FastRTC. So
can you show us just a little bit of code? Can you show us a tiny
about that and then?
Oh, sorry. Can you show us just a little code snippet? We love code snippets.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I have it here just in case. So it's split into two parts. The first part is just like the imports. So, you know, this being like a Hugging Face project, like open source is a big part of the stack. So FastRTC comes with with like a built-in speech-to-text and text-to-speech model. The text-to-speech is Moonshine by default, just because it runs pretty fast on like hardware that I've tried. And then the speech-to-text is Kokoro. And then here we're just calling Llama 4 through the Hugging Face API. And then this is just the whole application, right? So The way that it works is that you create a stream and a handler. And then in this case, we're using like a reply on pause handler. So what that does is that it'll stream the audio and then it's doing all the voice detection, like turn detection or voice activity turn detection logic for you. And then once it detects a pause, it basically calls this callback, right? And basically like any generator, Python generator will work. So what we're doing here within this logic is, it's like a standard like pipeline. We like transcribe the audio, format it for the API, and then we just stream the audio out. And then this final bit here is just like telling FastRTC to like display like the conversation like that radio chatbot UI.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice, clean Python code. Could we do the thing we talked about where we just talk a little bit about sort of how
Yes.
you think about the world and how like we've started to think about the world from lots of time building something a little bit similar with PipeCat. I've found that kind of this matrix, not really a matrix, just four things. And thank you to GPT-4o for generating the slide for me with some back and forth. Kind of represents the things you need to wrap your head around if you're getting started with conversational AI. There's a code framework, which I usually call something like an orchestration layer, but in 2025, you call it an agent framework. There's network transport. So Freddie talked about WebRTC. There's where you actually run the code, like where does the code live? And then there's potentially, if you're not just doing telephony, there's like client SDK stuff. Does this map on to the way you think about the world, or do you think about the world differently?
Yeah, no, I think you kind of broke it down very well. I think FastRTC tries to make each of these things a little bit better for you as well. I mean, maybe not the hosting so much. I haven't really worked on that, but yeah, definitely like these are the four main components, and FastRTC tries to make the components a little bit or just easier and abstracted away from you as much as possible.
Is there a kind of tight Gradio integration that helps with the hosting? I'm not close enough to it to have really figured that out, but Gradio makes a lot of things around like where does the code live easier?
Yeah, exactly. So basically like FastRTC, it comes with like a Gradio UI, right? So that's just like a fast API server, right? And you can deploy those pretty easily, pretty much anywhere. Obviously, if you're deploying a environment, you might need like a turn server or something like that, which we can get into like what that is. But if you have like a Hugging Face token, you can use like our turn servers basically to kind of facilitate that and make that easier. Yeah, basically like you get like a fast API box that you can kind of run anywhere. Hugging Face Spaces is where I deploy these, but you can kind of run it wherever you are. But then you could also, that's it.
For turn, I don't know whether I know this under NDA or not, but you have some kind of partnership for turn. Is that publicly announced?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, if you, we made the announcement last week, if you have a Hugging Face token, you can just access the Cloudflare turn network from FastRTC, and you get 10 gigabytes of traffic for free every month. So it makes it really easy to get started. You can kind of deploy these in like, Hugging Face, but also like, like Replit, like, like these kind of like code hosting solutions. And you'll have no trouble connecting to FastRTC. So if you've never done WebRTC before, like it wouldn't be that easy without that. So definitely trying to remove the barriers as much as possible.
I thought that was really cool when I heard about it. Cloudflare has an excellent global network and a really nice turn layer and a WebRTC focused engineering team that built a bunch of cool stuff there. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with? Unfortunately, like you're not here, so people can't grab you afterwards for questions. How did they find you? Where do you live online?
I think the FastRTC repo would be a great way to chat. If you have questions, if you have feedback, so that's at GitHub app/FastRTC. Maybe we could share the link afterwards. And on the Hugging Face Discord as well. There's a couple of FastRTC channels. And yeah, like I can put all I can send you all my socials, and then you can distribute out to everyone.
Absolutely, and I just turned my I just turned the camera around. You can see who you've been talking to. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I love what you're doing. It's been really fun
absolutely.
to have you here. See you online.
Bye.
Well, that worked shockingly well. And I say that as somebody who does remote audio video communications for a living. But we're wiring through a pretty big set of AV loops that go out to a YouTube live stream and in this room and then to Freddie on a daily video call. So I am really glad Freddie was able to join us. Oh, sorry. We're going to turn off the projector now because the last thing tonight is the investor panel. So those of you on the panel, come hang out. We'll move the chairs right in front of the screen and turn off the projector. Yeah, grab a chair, grab water if you want it. We can try 2 mics. All right, thank you all for joining for the panel. I'm super excited to get to talk to. We'll just pass the mic around. It'll add to the intimacy of the conversation. We should just start by having all of you introduce yourselves. Like, who are you and how do you do investing and how did you get started investing?
Hi, my name is Roseanne Winsek. I'm one of the founders and managing directors at Renegade Partners. We're an early stage venture firm. We're relatively new. We just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, but I've been in venture. Thanks. We're COVID baby. We had our first close of our first fund on Friday, March 13th, 2020. So our poor little fund has been through a lot, but we've got to partner with some great companies like Daily in the meantime. So we led Daily's Series B. We do seed through B, kind of typical early stage. I got into investing in 2012. I've been working in tech since, I date myself now, like 2008. And I was at a company in I guess this was like 2009, like early 10. And I was like presenting to the board. I worked on product, and one of the board members was like, "Oh, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I think it's because he knew I was like about to get laid off. And he asked, "Oh, have you ever thought about venture?" And I never thought about venture as a job that a young person had because there weren't a lot of associates back then. But I remember going home and reading everything I could and thinking it was my dream job because I dropped out of a biophysics PhD. And venture kind of felt like the perfect overlap of tech and academia, in that I got to think about the world and mental models and try to do experiments, but instead of pipetting, I got to talk to people. So it's just a better fit for me and my personality. We led Daily Series B, and then my last piece, and then I'll pass this on, is that we're also hiring a senior associate to principal. There's a job posting on our Twitter and LinkedIn and all those places. So go check it out if you or anybody you know is interested in early stage and wants to build the firm that they work at.
Excellent. So that was an amazing kind of intro into how to join venture. I don't have nearly as interesting of a story. I work as an engineer at Google DeepMind. I lead our DevRel team. And have been doing machine learning since around 2009, started off as an engineer. I write extremely small checks and have also been doing a little bit of scouting and mostly invest in a space that is very focused on kind of the open source world, specifically dev tools, and AI is applied to dev tools or dev tools that help with the entire AI process. So things that folks might have heard of are Marimo, which, if you haven't tried it out, are really slick kind of notebooks that are backed by Python files and run in WebAssembly. and I'm certainly a WASM fan. And then also Unsloth, which gives you really nice fine-tuning of open source or open models in a highly performant and efficient way. So, yeah.
I'm Lee Edwards. I'm a partner at Root Ventures. So we're a seed stage fund. We invest in, we call it sort of deep tech, hard tech. All four of us are engineers, and we just kind of invest in areas we've been engineers in. My background is mainly software engineering. I was at iRobot and Pivotal. Was the lead engineer at a company called SideTour that was acquired by Groupon, and I was CTO at Teespring. So I've been interested in software infrastructure, developer tools. How I got into venture is a long story. The short version, I guess, is I was angel investing in my friends' companies. I was liking it a lot. I was kind of thinking longer term in my career. It might be something I'd want to do further down the road. Had a friend that basically said, hey, I'll back you starting a micro fund. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'll quit my job, jump in head first, burn my savings down to a month of rent. And before I ran out of money, I met Root Ventures, thankfully. And so we were right at the end of Fund 1. So we had actually invested in Daily in Fund 1 before I had joined Root, when Daily was doing hardware. So Chrissy on our team is an electrical engineer, Kane is mechanical, Abhidhan's embedded systems. And then I actually was not working very closely with Daily until you got to the point that you said, hey, actually this API business might be a thing. And my partner's like, API business, I don't know. I'm like, yes, let's do this. Yeah, so we continued to invest, I guess.
Awesome. My name is Radhika. I work at a firm called Delta Capital. We are sadly not investors in Daily, but maybe we can change that. I don't know. As our name suggests, we are the venture firm associated with Dell. But contrary to what our name suggests, we're not a strategic fund in that we're not trying to invest on behalf of any of the businesses Dell has. Similar to these guys, we're investing for one thing and one thing only, which is we have to make venture returns. Dell is our single investor. And that's the difference. While these guys may have a bunch of LPs who are investing into their funds, we have one investor, which is Dell. And Dell is actually still majority owned and operated by Michael Dell. So we report into him and we're trying to make him the best venture returns. One of the ways we drive those returns, in addition to doing anything else that a venture capital would also do, help you hire, give you advice, whether you want it or not, we try to leverage the Dell ecosystem. Dell and its collection of companies, the businesses under it, they've been selling PCs, storage, servers, software services to Fortune 500s, Global 2000s for the last 40 plus years. So once we make an investment, we try to get that ecosystem, the enterprise ecosystem, to work for you. So if you're selling infrastructure and applications for the enterprise, we do a lot of data, dev tools, security, AI, cloud, and enterprise applications, and you need enterprise introductions and customers, we can help with that a lot, and that's what we have experience doing. But in essence, we're C days and Bs for the most part. We can do some things beyond, some things earlier, but we like to lead and co-lead rounds and work for you just like any other venture firm would. How did I get started? I was a developer post-college. Actually, fun fact was I was working at a voice AI company back in 2012. Learned a little bit of lesson in market timing and technology at a risk. There's a company called MindMeld. Cisco ended up acquiring it, but that was my first job after first software engineering job. I worked at another startup after that, and then typical startup problem, I guess, too much to do, not enough people to do it. So moved over from engineering into product and everything else. And then I realized I am doing that everything else very poorly, not as well as I did the technical stuff, since my way of thinking was super technical. So I ended up going to business school and met someone who said, hey, do you want to try this venture thing? Similar to you. And I was like, all right, let's look at startups from a completely different angle. And 8 years in, I haven't been as useful as I used to be as a developer. So.
Try this with This one's for you, Radhika. So you invested in Cartesia recently, I believe. A lot of us here really like the Cartesia models, know the Cartesia team. How does Cartesia fit into your thesis or your worldview or your zeitgeist or however you think about what you're doing?
Let me ask a show of hands. Who's played around with their models here? Oh, decent number of people. Awesome. So I guess Cartesia came as a result of a pretty deep technical thesis that we had, that high dimensionality signals like audio and video just need a different architecture than transformers offered you. And we were actively talking to a bunch of companies who were trying alternatives and trying to apply them to different modalities. And when we found the team and heard about what they were working on, they'd already released a couple of their text-to-speech models, but then they had a much broader vision of how to become a voice platform, with starting with text-to-speech to then doing speech-to-speech and all of the infrastructure components associated with it as well, so that you could have natural human-like conversations. The other thing was they were actively thinking about deploying it on different types of devices as well, which we thought was really interesting, that not only do you offer it as an API, but then how can you put a voice assistant in everyone's pocket and have models that run on a variety of different hardware. So that combination of, hey, new model architecture, a team who's really truly an expert in that architecture and then is building all of the infrastructure layers down the stack as well, we thought was really interesting to help build a new voice platform, if you will.
I'll just repeat what I said in the email as well, which is you're welcome to grab the mic and follow up on what each other say, and we can have a knock down, drag out conversation. It doesn't have to just be me. But since I do have the mic, and I do want to make it all about me. Lee, as you said, Abidan was the first check into Daily. We were sort of in a throwing a bunch of things at the wall phase, including building hardware early on. When we started working with you, it was really nice timing around, on our part, focusing on dev tools, and on Root's part, sort of expanding from a early in the fund's life cycle of a real hardware focus to a broader hard tech focus, including dev tools. So my question for you, and you and I talk a lot about this, but as we've been saying, things have changed in the last week, so I don't know what you're going to say. How has your approach to investing in developer tools changed in the Gen AI era?
Yeah. No, I had a really good answer for this, and then after you sent me that email, between then and now, OpenAI bought Windsurf, or leaked that they're going to buy Windsurf, and came out with Codex CLI, so everything's changed again. No, to be honest, maybe I should admit to this, but I was originally skeptical. I think the first person I talked to about AI code gen was David Luan, who is the founder of Adept, which we were also the first investor in. And they, when he was at OpenAI, he was doing AI code gen, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Programming languages are natural languages, regular languages, not natural languages. Why would you build a natural language model to understand something that is strictly defined as a regular language? It's called an AST. This is stupid. So anyway, I was very wrong. Yeah, I guess I tend to think my personal experiences writing code with AI are best when I'm writing code and still engineering, and the AI is helping me. When I let Jesus take the wheel, it frustrates me, because I know what I want, and I know how to express it, and the best way to express it is structured. And I'm using natural language for certain things. So I was building something in Rust because I was wanting to learn Rust. A lot of our companies are using it. I'm not very good at Rust, so I was kind of build a hash map in Rust with mapping these things. I'm like, okay, cool, that's how you do it. I copy paste it in. So honestly, if anything, it has 100% replaced Stack Overflow for me, sadly to say. Also an investor at Joel's next company, so I don't record this and tell him that. But yeah. Crap. All right. No, he knows that. So I don't know. I think the vibe coding thing is interesting from the standpoint of raising the floor and democratizing access to programming. And I think as engineers, we many of us have a tendency, the industry has a tendency to gatekeep around like, that's real engineering, or like, oh, if you're not direct memory management, then you're like, you don't know what you're doing, right? And like, we get in these nerd snipe contests until someone explains Maxwell's equations in a vacuum. And so more people are gonna get to create more things with this. I don't think that eliminates the need to, for engineers to like, do engineering, learn code. Like, I don't think natural language will completely replace programming for all use cases in any time horizon that makes sense for my fund. I could be wrong. So I don't know where that leads me.
Yeah, sees a lot of stuff right now.
So a question is whether AI will replace dev tools within the near term future.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting question. And I am of the camp that believes that by the end of the year we'll have a model that is capable of writing code better than any human that has ever existed, which opens up a lot of really interesting possibilities. I think it's also worthwhile pointing out that just because people sell like kits to build furniture from IKEA doesn't mean that you don't have like artisans crafting like really, really beautiful bespoke furniture or bespoke kind of things that you might want to include in a home. The favorite kind of anecdotes that I have around AI as applied to the software development lifecycle are mostly from what I see at Google, and then also the tools that people are building using the Gemini APIs, which are now available in Cursor and Windsurf and Klein and Rootcode and all of the like. But well, I do think that people like optionality, like being able to toggle between different models. But the real benefits, on a good week, software engineers are spending, perhaps 10% of their time actively writing code within an IDE. All of the other parts are the parts that really take away the joy from the job, right? Like the parts around doing migrations, around kind of debugging, around attempting to find information that might be useful in order to architect a system. Meetings. Oh, good lord!
Yeah.
Like it's like all of those things. And so AI is able to be applied to all of the kind of like nuts and bolts of software creation in a much more interesting way that gives people the space to be more creative and to actually build, as opposed to get distracted from building by all of these many other things. Like last week at Next, we announced something that is kind of applying Gemini to the kind of project management of software projects. So you have kind of a description of something that you need to do, like perhaps like a Java migration or something similar. The PRD for it gets, which is also Gemini created, like gets decomposed into steps. Each one of those are a separate ticket on a Kanban board, and then you kick off a model that just attacks each one of the things until it goes into completion. It's the same like AI is applied to the code review process. Somebody files a PR in your GitHub repo, model kicks off, like gives a detailed code review, and then also makes recommendations to the person, as opposed to your engineering team getting distracted and doing the same thing. So that was very long-winded, but it's I do think that we're going to see AI applied to much more interesting places in the software development lifecycle, not just kind of this business of writing code or vibe coding or whatever it is, which leads to security vulnerabilities and like compliance disasters and all sorts of things.
Roseanne, when Nina and I met you, we filtered our interactions very, very tactically down to one thing that was on our minds, which was we wanted to add a board member that had a lot of growth stage, or maybe more precisely, transition to growth stage experience. We're very lucky to have you on the board. Is there a playbook for that transition from like early stage to growth stage? And if so, how has that changed in the generative AI era?
Oh my God, it's changed a lot. I would say the playbook is kind of meta. So before I started Renegade, I was at IVP, a large growth stage firm. Before that, I was at an early stage firm, Canaan. At Renegade, I built the firm I wish I could have followed at IVP. And a lot of that was around like how do you think about getting companies ready to go be big growth companies? Because it felt like we were kind of like saying the same things over and over again. And kind of through all of this, I think the biggest thing you're betting on with a founder and as a founder is like your ability to change, right? Like everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And so like the one thing we're all sure of is like everything is going to change, right? Like we all know that, right? Like at the end of the year, we're gonna have a model that can code better than any human on earth, right? What does that mean, right? What are the second and third order effects of that? And I think as a founder, like you just have to be, you know, kind of that strong opinions loosely held and like holding that vision that you are like the world that you want to create while like living in the reality that you are. And the truth is like the most important thing that you can do for your company and your team and your board and your product is making sure that like you are growing with the company and you are changing, right? And like the truth is the company is going to change a lot. You're not always going to have the same folks around the table because there are some people who are like so awesome from 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 and 10 to 100. But that 10 to 100 person like might think about like the good old days and want to do that 0 to 1, but like it won't happen. But the thing is like you have to be that person, right? Like you have to do all that changing. And so I think a really good way to do that, really like the one, like you kind of asked me about playbooks, and the one playbook that I just like, I don't think I'll ever get over is like spending time with people who are like 1 and 2 and 3 clicks ahead of you, especially like execs, like who's an exec that you would love to hire that you today, like they have no business, like they would never join your company today, right? But like they might in 3 years, right? And frankly, like probably a person like that, they're not gonna respond to a job spec and come right over, right? And so building that relationship, getting to know them, but also like getting to know what like really good and really and 10 to 100 person looks like, so that you can calibrate, you can see who on your team is gonna grow and who isn't. But I think that just like always thinking about like your number one job is like making sure, especially in like a market and a time like this where like things can grow so fast, like how do you make sure that you grow so fast too? And like the team that you build and the people that you put around you, because like that's the only thing that like we're sure is gonna happen.
Learning how to learn what good looks like is an under-discussed startup founder challenge. I definitely think that's true. It has felt to me like for a long time, people were sleeping on how transformative voice as an interface was going to be. And maybe that's changed recently. I think a lot of us in this room probably feel like voice is super transformative as an interface, and we're just at the beginning of exploring that. What are the 4 of you seeing in the kind of multimodal conversational, broadly speaking, space that's like super, super exciting to you as investors? Or as like human beings, but as investors too.
Who wants to start?
I can start. I agree with you. I think it feels like we're at an inflection point, and you know, it's the underlying infrastructure companies. We talked about models, and you're also enabling that, I guess, with Daily and all of the underlying infrastructure to make building these applications a lot easier. The things that I think about still are, you know, we talk to a lot of enterprises, and many of them are trying to think about how to apply this technology, and they're still worried about reliability. They're still worried about, hey, how consistently will a voice agent respond if my customer reaches out or if my vendor or supplier reaches out? So I think I'm excited about those improvements coming in terms of voice systems that actually are reliable, that you can rely on to do your core business processes, not just talk to customers, but do all of the other business processes that you do, hire people, talk to vendors, suppliers, all of that. And I'm excited to see what that enables in terms of how enterprises do business and how voice as a medium, which was primarily human to human, evolves from human to agent and then agent to agent in that context as well.
Yeah, so I guess less of a company that I've seen and more of a technology I'd like to see. I think when we started talking about voice, like I think I've always been a believer because I grew up on Star Trek, and so like it is the ultimate computer, right? Like the writers of Star Trek are not constrained by reality. In the 80s and 90s, they're building a super intelligent computer. And the interface is, hey, write me a story where data is Sherlock Holmes, or like play this Beethoven piece, but like make it Klingon, or like every time, like alert me when the cat leaves the room or whatever. So like I think part of what it's doing, like it's doing a voice interface, and then like it's doing like DSP, or it's doing like code generation. Like some of the kinds of stuff it's doing is actually really interesting if you think about what would you actually need to do to make it do things. Like Alexa doesn't do that, obviously, right? It's like it's doing voice. That part is, neural networks, but under the hood, it's a lot of rules-based stuff. And I'm sure they're developing and working on it, changing it. But I don't know, I wonder about that. Like I don't know that like our existing experiences for like I'm writing code in the editor, is code gen actually going to be something very different where we don't even really think about it as code? We think about it as I told it to do this when the cat leaves or whatever, and I don't really care about the fact that it wrote code. And then also, well, like, do I care what language it's using? Like, at what point, like, is this the kind of like no code? Is this where vibe coding goes? It's not like I'm in cursor. It's in like I'm just instructing the computer.
And it anticipates your needs as well, so you don't have to like invoke the command. It just kind of recognizes that the next logical step would be something, and like a concierge or like a butler, for lack of a better term, it just kind of has it ready for you. It's an exciting world. I think I see a lot of startups building for the state of the models today. Where the models are today, where the gaps are, and then building infrastructure around the gaps to try to make them more resilient, or to make the models, meet the needs of these enterprise customers. When the reality is that the models are, improving at a rapid rate. Every couple of weeks, it seems like we have a new kind of step change release model that changes the way that we think about building everything. And so I think it's really, it's certainly important from Google's perspective. Not that I speak for Google, just speak for myself. But it's certainly clear that the future is going to be multimodal, and multimodal interactions, things like augmented reality, or being able to invoke certain actions through voice. I loved Star Trek. I also really, really loved the concept of the Babelfish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And so one of my most favorite new features that we've released is kind of multi-language support within the spoken voice API. Because one of the most magical things, right, is this concept that no matter where you go in the world, you would be able to talk to every human and be able to have perfect communication with each one. As opposed to right now, where we live in this very fragmented state where it's very difficult to communicate with each other across national borders. I think we would be able to solve a lot of the world's problems if we were able to kind of remove some of those barriers. So that's just like personal thoughts. We'll see many more interactions that are anticipatory as opposed to explicitly invoked from users. And also, like, whatever you're doing, do not build based on the kind of hindrances of the models today. Build as if the models are perfect, because soon they will be. And what are the application experiences that you would want then?
Yeah, right. The models are the worst they're ever going to be.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And
also the most expensive that are will be. So like build as if they're perfect and they cost $0.
So, we're generalist investors, and we invest in like dev tools. We also have like an evals company called Free Play, which I just think is like so interesting because like there's a new stack that's going to have to exist. And evals is a big part of that. And then my most recent investment is a company called Hedral that's like a full stack structural engineering firm that to its customers, it just looks like a structural engineering firm, right? They have structural engineers, they sell a stamped drawing, but like under the hood, right? It's AI. And I get really excited about that because I think there's just like such interesting ways to distribute your product or tap into industries or, go to market if like from the outside you look like how humans are used to buying. Because the thing is like the models are changing so fast that like we're all going to change a lot more slowly. And by we, I don't mean the people in this room, I mean like society, right? And norms and culture. And I think a lot about like, when we still say hang up the phone. I remember like, right? And I remember like I was babysitting like my cousin or something like that. Like this is probably like 15 years ago. And she was like, why do you, or maybe not that, maybe like 10 years ago. She's like, why do you say hang up the phone? And I was like, oh, right. It's because like you've never like hung up a phone, right? And or even like it's funny, like I have a small child and like she has like this play cell phone, but she like doesn't talk on it. Like we try to get her to talk on it and she like won't talk on it, right? Because like she doesn't see us talk on the phone. So like I think there's just all these cultural norms that are like going to emerge. Like in a year, we're probably going to have all these ways that we talk to voice agents that like we might still be really polite or we might be complete total assholes to them, right? Like culturally, like there might be like there's going to be norms around it and like how those emerge are going to be so fascinating. I'm very excited for that. But around these like full stack companies that I think are so interesting, right? Like I think voice is like such an incredible vector because also if you think about like people who pick up and hang up the phone, right? Like that's a way to reach a customer that's not through social media or, you know, online advertising that's just like, you know, opening up. And I mean, we're all gonna get a lot more spam, but we're already getting a lot more spam. But like, if we think about ways that a product can interact with a customer and have like these like delightful like push experiences instead of like having to pull your customer to, you know, your site or your app, like it's going to be such a new, interesting vector. And I think like what we think of as like a tech company or an AI company is gonna look, at least from the outside, it might look like a snoozy old, you know, normal business, but under the hood, it's actually extremely sophisticated.
We have so much to talk about. We could talk forever, but I think that's a good stopping point. I think we can hang around till about 9, although Jeff will tell me if that's not right. And so there's time to talk to each other more and time to find the panelists and the Phonic folks and ask any questions you have. Thank you all for coming out. We'll see you maybe some of you on May 8th at AWS.
Sí. Me dijo que estaba con Federico Soria, ¿no? Su amigo.